So, very good morning to everyone who's here, as live as we can be on a Zoom. And I think you're all still real. Some of you might be artificial intelligence by now. I don't know. But anyway, for those of you who are here live, then very good morning. For those of you who are more and more joining us on YouTube, then good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. And a very warm welcome, everyone, to this one-off talk. In one way, it's a way of starting this summer's teachings on abhidharma, based on a wonderful text by the great and fairly recent Tibetan master, Mipham Rinpoche. But what I intend to do is start that formally in our next teaching session, which is in 2 weeks' time. Next week is Tonglen, monthly Tonglen. So there, the way I need to start properly, traditionally, is with talking about the author, Mipham Rinpoche, a little bit, and the title, and going through a zoom in from the Buddha's teachings to abhidharma to Mipham Rinpoche's presentation. So that's the classical way, and we'll do that. Today we are jumping ahead. We'll be dealing with the 10 first chapters from Mipham Rinpoche's work. Not everything, a selection, but we're jumping to one of the later chapters of those first 10. The text is in 3 parts. There's the first 10 chapters, 10 topics, and then there's 2 more sections that talk about why we need those topics in order to gain what are called the 3 vidyas. We often hear about vidyadhara, wisdom holders. So what is vidya? And so we see we need the information in those 10 topics to really understand vidya. And then once we've got vidya, then last section, what that brings about. So here, the topic of time, I thought, is quite an interesting one, and I thought we'd deal with it briefly, but then later on, in a month or two's time, we'll come back to it again in its sequence, having already put in place the information from the chapters that preceded, that give it more sense. So anyway, today we're here as Buddhas to be, as bodhisattvas. First we need to get our heads around that. We need to take our minds out of our daily preoccupations and look way, way, way ahead to when we will be brilliant, wonderful, full of so many radiant qualities. You are a light for the world. That's you. You're on your way. So we remind ourselves of that, and that we're here for everybody. That's the whole point of being a bodhisattva, to see through the I was going to quote the whole of the Shakespeare tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow verse, which ends up with what we are, which is fools strutting about on the stage of life. But anyway, let's forget that for the moment. We're bodhisattvas to be. We're here for everyone, and to see the fallacy of ego. Such a damaging illusion. When it goes, you realize how ridiculous it was. While it's there, it feels very important. So we're in the process of stepping out of that illusion and into the truth of universal love, a real, genuine care for everyone, which is so healthy. It is the real health of the mind. So we do our first prayers that inspire us and motivate us to study well this morning and to think carefully. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends. May they find respect and live in places of peace and plenty. And most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being, totally beyond suffering, and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru Om kurimare jite karota keyorite jovati oloyane Pishudanye male malapanaye kukore Kaka grasana umuke paramuki amuke Shamme davane sawa graha bandhanane negretva Sawa bhava pravadina vimuktamara pasha savitva buddha mudra Anugatita sava mariputsarita parishuddhe Pegashantu sava marakamane. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Thank you. So, our topic today is time, and I think most of you have got the support documents, and we won't be going through those. The idea today is we spend the first 20 minutes or half an hour just generally looking at time from various perspectives, different cultural, scientific perspectives. And then we go into Mipham Rinpoche's chapter, because that will show how relevant it is. And also the main point is that I want you to think. Now, I know in those very, very high teachings that are everywhere on internet, thinking's not got a good reputation. We want to go beyond thought and beyond the thinking mind, and indeed, that's true. But the strange thing is that the only way to get out of thought is by thinking. We have to get the confused thinking into, it's like tangled threads, tangled wool. We have to untangle the confused or ignorant thinking, through clear thinking, good thinking, true thinking. And then in true thinking, and from true thinking, we're able to manage our meditation, which is the actual work on our mind, work on our emotions, thoughts, whatever we are, through clear thinking, guiding the process, that then we can go beyond thought. So it's very important to think well. Right thought is very much part of our Buddhist path. You know, when we get the Eightfold Path, it's right this, right that. When it comes to thought, it's right thought. It's not no thought. So right thought is very, very important. And so only you can do it, you see. I can't think for you, and Buddha can't think for you, and Karmapa can't think for you. They can only help you realize the need to think and give you the material to help you think. But then your progress or lack of it will depend to a very, very large degree on how much you do think. And I've heard some lamas, not the best, say, well, you don't need to think, because Milarepa didn't need to think. So better lamas than those not so good lamas say, really? Really? Milarepa didn't need to think. So, and they say, but after he did all his hard work, Milarepa, you know, for Mapa went through his hardships. Then he was 7 years of intense study with Mapa. And we see that when later on in his songs, when he's talking to scholars who come to challenge him, you can see he's like a master class. He blows their mind, not with lots of details, but he puts his finger on the great topics like prajna paramita and so on, 6 paramitas. And only a person who's gone through them and gone beyond them can do that. So we definitely do need to think. So I want you to think about time. So I'm giving you not information and then it's all over. I'm giving you food that you need to chew. Otherwise you don't get the nourishment. It just goes rotten in your food storage container, which is your brain. You need to chew it while it's still nice food and get the nourishment out of it. So in the support document I sent, then we started with St. Augustine because he's terrific about time. He had quite a scientific mind. He was very well informed from the knowledge of Rome, very much based in the knowledge of Greece in the centuries before. So he was up to scratch on the science of the day. He was, of course, a saint, very, very, very wise person. So he says one thing, which is quite simple, but actually he could have been saying that on behalf of 21st century physics and quantum physics, and it will be equally applicable, and for Buddhists as well. He says, what then is time? Provided nobody asks me, I know. I mean, we all know. But if I want to explain it to an inquirer, I don't know. Of course, we all know time. You were all here for 9:30 UK time to attend this talk, and we all know what's coming next week and what's planned for the summer and so on and so on. Our whole life is based in so many ways on time. So it's not as though this is some new topic coming out of the blue in Buddhism where you're thinking, what the hell is this now? Time is something we've lived with all of our life. And like in my generation of teenagers, which I suppose it doesn't apply to so many people here, but we had like the Rolling Stones. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Like that. Time's on your side. Like St. Augustine says, well, what does that mean? It makes sense when you listen to it. But time's on your side if you start thinking about it. What the hell does it mean? Or evocative things like the Beatles. Yesterday. Oh. All my troubles seem so far away. Or back to the Rolling Stones. There have been good times, there have been bad times. This time is sort of there, all around us. People tell you, when you're heartbroken, somebody you loved dies, goes away. They say, time is a great healer. It's very true. We've seen it ourselves. We've seen it. But what is this time that's the great healer? I mean, if you say, my friend Dr. George is a great healer, then you go and see Dr. George and he does something. He gives you medicine or he gives you a massage or whatever it is. But what is this time that's a great healer? Or we tell people, give it time, give it time. What is this time that we give it? We use the word and the idea of time in the end to mean many, many different things. We often think or say, I don't have the time. What we're really saying is, my priorities at the moment are this and that, and so what I'm trying to say is time is a word we use meaning many different things, and it saves us explaining lots of things. I don't have the time. I mean, I have a phone. Okay. I have another pair of spectacles. Time? Do I have time? If I have it, I could give it to you. I don't have the time. Or with history. Time's very real for us. We can think back. I can say, in the time of the Mahasiddhas, and all of your imagination is reeling back into what? More than 1,000 years ago in India, and Tilopa, Naropa, Saraha, and all those people. You've kind of, well, what have you done? I mean, you didn't travel back in time, for sure. You've dug information out of your brain that corresponds to what Ken's saying to form an image. But it felt like you kind of went back. And if I say, yes, but before that, there were the Egyptians, then you've rewound, like on a cassette, when you do rewind, you've gone bzzz, you've gone back to the Egyptians. Then you say, yes, but in the Stone Age, and you've gone back even further. It's kind of there, the past, a whole load of references that make sense one before another and one leading to another. There's a whole organized reality inside us for the past. And likewise, but quite different in another way, there's the future. I mean, the past, something happened somewhere. It probably wasn't one bit like we think it was. Probably your images of ancient Egypt and so on, they came from Hollywood movies, these Technicolor movies with thousands of people. And it was probably quite different, but it's kind of there. But at least somewhere there was an Egypt that happened with pyramids and pharaohs, and there were Mahasiddhas, whatever we think of them. Future didn't happen yet. But just like we have this whole mindscape, mental landscape, that's in a logical order, that's the past, we've got a future too, with a near future, the next few minutes, tomorrow, next year, future life, this world in 100 years' time, that's there too. So time is very present for us. And not just for us, not just for us. Buddha spoke about time. He spoke about his past lives, like the Jataka tales. There are more than 700 of them. Not just one or two little references, 700 stories of past lives. And Buddha spoke of the future. He gave predictions in the Mahayana Sutras. It's one important part of our bodhisattva journey. That at one point, and it will only happen once, so we need to be ready for it when it happens. It says, at one point in one life on your bodhisattva journey, Buddha, the Buddha of that time, will tell you, and you will become Buddha in this place with so many followers, and your teachings will last so long, and you'll be Buddha name, and so on. That will be beautiful. That will be wonderful. It's kind of the affirmation, because it means your journey is so stable and it's so far advanced that now it's matured to the point where you will actually become Buddha, is clear to the mind of a Buddha. So what he can just say, see, I'm hoping you're thinking. I'm hoping, in English they say, you've got your thinking cap on. You're not just listening, you're thinking. What does all this mean? What does it imply? The Buddha can know the future that didn't happen yet. How does that work? Nothing happened yet of the future. Not like the past, where it all happened and gone. Not one bit of it happened yet, by definition. If it happened, it's the past, right? If it's happening, it's now. Future is, by definition, didn't happen yet. But Buddha knows what's going to happen. Ooh, how's that work? But anyway, it's not just us who have notions of time. Buddha spoke much about the past and future ages and other eons and so on. Mipham Rinpoche tells us a bit about that in the teaching. So the point is, that we'll come back to, time as such doesn't exist. What we mean by that is it doesn't exist as something in its own right, as a quantity, as an entity, of time. Like, I could give you time, or time is a healer. It's not a something or a somebody in its own right. So it is, it's a human convention. It's a very convenient word. There's something else you might like to think about convenient words. And a very, very important area of Buddhism is me, or rather you, or what we call self or ego. It's the same thing as St. Augustine's saying. You know? If we say Ken, then we all know what Ken is. You know, Ken, we've got, 33 people here. I can see everyone's name. I've got on the right-hand side of my screen everyone's name. Ken is not Alex, Brendan, Catherine, Colette, Dorcas, Eileen. Of course I'm not. You're you. I'm me. Unfortunately, I'm not Buddha Shakyamuni. I'm not Karmapa. I'm nobody else. There's nobody in the world like me. So when you talk about Ken, of course, that makes a lot of sense. But then, and it especially makes a lot of sense to me, not being you, or not being Buddha, or, not being Donald Trump, not being whatever. That's very important to me, that I'm me and not somebody else. But then if I sit in meditation and I try and find this, something that exists in its own right, doesn't change, that's Ken, of course I can't. Most of us have done that, and we've explored it in all sorts of ways. So there's no Ken thing. I just took some walnuts out of my pocket, so I'm more comfortable. I carry walnuts for the squirrels. So often I meet a squirrel in the garden, and they know me very well, so they come up and they stand up, and I throw them a walnut. That's a walnut. But there's no Ken. There's no Ken essence that's been there all my life. I'm a changing, impermanent set of interdependent circumstances. But it's very convenient to say Ken for this set of changing, interdependent circumstances, because otherwise what am I going to say? So that you know who I'm talking about. So it's the same thing with time. With the self and with time is very, very convenient, but it's not something that exists in its own right. So then we come to another quote from St. Augustine, where he says, so it is in you, my mind, that I measure periods of time. It is a human convention. It's something, a convention. We agree on something, and it makes sense to us. Time is not a something. It's in the way our mind analyzes things and expresses things through speech. So when we say time doesn't exist in Buddhist terms, exist always and only ever means, in those philosophical terms, exists in its own right and exists lastingly. So time doesn't do that. Now, until recent times, the last, I can't really put a number on it, but 10, 15 years, 20 years maybe, depending, then physics thought that too. Time is not something that exists. Time is a very relative thing that we humans use to measure, but it's based on things that do exist relatively, like this sun and the earth. So the earth moves, this is the sun, the earth moves on its axis once in what we call a day. So we can say yesterday. We don't say tomorrow day, but we say tomorrow, or we say today, this day. So then we can measure things, but we don't say, I'll see you when the earth has rotated one whole time, plus a quarter of a rotation. We say, I'll see you tomorrow afternoon. It makes a lot more sense. But that time is abstracted. Abstract means pull, ab means from. It's abstracted from the reality of planet moving, or the moon going around the earth, which is one, that's a nice word in English, month. And we say month, but it's a month, because the moon's gone round once on the earth. So we've got moon time, sun time, and then shorter than that, we had experiential time, feeling time. Morning has got its own feel, midday's got its feel, afternoon's got its feel, evening's got its feel. They're very different moods of the day. So that makes sense, and we give them words, and then we can talk about tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, and so on. But time doesn't exist. Based on those relative realities that do exist for us, then we make a system of time. And then, of course, people made water clocks, where you make a hole in a pot, and the water drips out, transparent pot, so you can see by how the water goes down, what sort of time has passed, because those particular water clocks, they empty in one day, or something like that, so you can see how time's going. Or lamps burning and that kind of thing. But then they made watches. Amazing. All those little cogs and springs moving round. Woo! Crazy. I mean, we take them for granted because they've always been there for us. But the people who first put those big ones together, and then smaller ones and smaller ones, then they work with microscopes to make amazing machinery. So we can say, okay, I'll be back in 3.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes didn't exist 2,000 years ago. Anyway, so the second quote from St. Augustine, time is in our minds. And until 10, 15, 20 years ago, physics agreed. And Einstein with relativity, very important in there. Time doesn't come as a immediate factor. The famous E equals mc squared. There's no t in there for time. Oh, but yes, there is. Because c is the speed of light. And what is speed? Distance covered in a certain time. Kilometers per hour or per second, or whatever. So, but anyway, it became very clear that time is not an existent, like the sun and the moon and the movements and the relative movements. It's in our mind. And very usefully so, too. So then the last quote of St. Augustine: if nothing passes away, there is no past time. Because it's still here. If it's still here, it's present. So if things don't pass away, there is no past time. And if nothing new turns up, there is no future, because you're still in the present. And if nothing existed, there would be no present. So Saint Augustine has obviously thought a lot about past, present, and future. And this becomes interesting in science, where we have science as this sort of question of presence. It's like in like simple explanations of Einstein. If you're in a train that's moving next to your, and there's a train next to it moving at the same speed, and you're only looking at that train, nothing changes. So it's just the same as if the trains were in the station, not moving. You're looking, there's somebody there eating their snack, and then there's a child crying. Now that's the present that's happening there. But then if your train starts going a little bit faster, then that starts to become the past, and you've got the next carriage where you've got, a whole load of whatever it is, that's becoming the past, and a new thing is arriving, which is the future. And then your train slows down, and that train starts overtaking you, and the past becomes the future again. So you're back with the person eating their snack, and so on. It's very relative. But then you look out the other side of your train, and you're going at 150 kilometers an hour through a landscape that is really new, gone, new, gone, new, gone, almost faster than you can see it without your eyes needing to blink. Time is in the mind, and it's about what is there, or what's no longer there, or the new stuff that's coming into your experience. And then we can go from this kind of technical talk of time to the more meaningful but harder to describe stuff. Been there, done that. So what somebody is going through now for the first time, been there, done that, kind of. It's your past and it's their future. It's like me when you get your cancer diagnosis, right? So that was for a while back now, 5, 6, 7 years. It's a shock moment. Your life, your life is going to change from that moment on. And you have to deal with it, rearrange yourself, and then that's your future that's just arriving. And then now somebody tells me, they've gone for the test, and that it's my past, but for them it's their now and the start of their future. And like in meditation, people's meditation experience, meditation questions, they're doing this. Of course, it's not the same for everybody, but there's a past and a future in terms of what's been there and gone away, and what's yet to come or coming on, and what's the reality just now, which is very important. So that's finished with St. Augustine. Now, a couple of times I said science and quantum physics and all that interesting stuff until the last, recently. So I was talking with a very brilliant quantum physicist in Brussels, 4 years ago now. And I was talking about philosophy of science and how that had moved on in the 20th century, so that everything is consciousness. There's not a real separate physical existence. Science is the language of what we humans experience. It's not an analysis of a universe which is out there. So that seemed, and then there's lots and lots of very famous physicists, so many wonderful names, famous names, who said that in brilliant terms, really. And so I said, and when we got around to time, and then time doesn't exist, which is the way physics were going. And then he looked, he said, well, yeah. He said, yeah, but now there's a new movement and time's coming back into fashion. So now time as time-space is coming on board. So anyway, I've got to finish this general introduction, which is mainly to get you thinking about time. In the backup literature I sent you, which spoke more about this, then you can see in terms of modern physics, then there are three main references for time. There is time as a human convention for measuring things we experience. So that's purely in our minds. It's not time as something that exists. It's a human, useful convention. Second is time arrows. And when you get into that, then it gets really complicated because it's modern physics, which is really complicated. And unless you're a superstar at maths, it's difficult. But time arrows is a very, very interesting idea. It's that although time doesn't exist as such, the way things work, some things work, is unidirectional. Like if you break an egg, you can't put it back together again. Will come soon now. When you make karma, you can't put it back and not do it. You can try and correct the results, but when it's done, it's done. So the fact of a time arrow is related to in physics, because science only deals with matter, really, things that can be reproduced in experiments. It deals with what it perceives as the material universe. So it's to do with entropy and forward movement and increased confusion in the universe. Basically, things get more and more complicated because of this irreversible forward movement, which is called a time arrow. Then the third area, which is of interest, is the big picture of like Big Bang, expanding universe, and how that within itself determines time, and how these fascinating things, like with really powerful telescopes, you're actually looking back in time. When we see the stars in the sky at night, we're looking at the past. And depending on which stars, because they all look the same to us, but some are much deeper in space than others. And you're seeing history and more ancient history, and with really, really fantastic telescopes, you're almost going back billions of years to the Big Bang. Woo! In the present, you can see the past. It's crazy. It's crazy. So anyway, let's leave that. So now we come to Mipham Rinpoche. It's just to get you thinking about time so that your mind is jazzed up and awake and sort of on the ball and in this area of thinking. So we're going to be working this summer through a text by Mipham Rinpoche. Very briefly, who was he? He was somebody absolutely amazing, brilliant. He was born almost 200 years ago, about 180 years ago, in Tibet, eastern Tibet, I think. And he grew up in the Nyingmapa tradition, and he was just brilliant at everything, what people call a polymath, brilliant at so many different things. And he taught, he wrote on many topics, and his writings they are amazing. If you're a scholar and you want to study, then you go to his work on that topic. You've got the whole thing in the sort of the best nutshell you can get it. All the essentials, not too much detail, very clearly presented. He is terrific. So this text that he wrote on Abhidharma is so vast, there's so much of it. And I don't know if you've ever read Theravadan textbooks on Abhidharma, but they're hard to read. They're really hard to read, like Path of Purification, for instance, Vishuddhimagga, and so on. So he really sums up Theravada Abhidharma and Mahayana Abhidharma brilliantly. He was part of a movement of lamas called Rinpoche in Tibet, because there was a lot of sectarianism, and it was people who wanted to learn from all the traditions. Now, a lot of people call it the Rinpoche movement. You have to be very careful, because if you want to go beyond sectarianism and understand what everyone's got to say and understand the Buddha's message through that, if you make a new school, which is called the non-sectarian school, you've just defeated your own objective, because you've become another school. So when people talk about Rinpoche, sometimes it sounds as though, oh, they made, how can you say, a reformist movement in Tibet. And it wasn't that, it's just they were broad-minded people. There was a time in Tibet when some amazing minds were all reborn at the same time, and that helped every tradition get their act together. Amazing. So amongst Mipham Rinpoche's students were the previous Taisitrupa and the previous, I know Alwan died quite recently, but the one before him, Trungpa Rinpoche. And Mipham's Kinjuk text was written in Trungpa Rinpoche's monastery, the first 10 chapters that we're going to study. And so there is a very direct lineage connection between Trungpa Rinpoche and Mipham Rinpoche, and I received these teachings from Trungpa Rinpoche. So it's a very wonderful, close connection. So then let's look now I realized it shouldn't have been a one-off session, it should have been a two-off session. Never mind. Okay, so now this is interesting. The way he starts this chapter on time is time has three aspects: past, present, and future. So far you're feeling comfortable. Past, present, and future, you got it right. No, you don't. Because the way he starts is with what past, present, and future means in Buddhism. The past is where it's all in terms of karma, cause and effect. It's in terms of causality. The past is where causes were made and their results played out, and all the results are finished. So cause and effect, all finished, all gone. That's the past. The present, which is very important for us, and in terms of the Buddhist sense of being in the present and working with the present, is when the causes have been made and the results either haven't manifested yet, so you're carrying the karma but it's not manifested yet, or the results are manifesting at present. And these will be many, many overlapping strands of karma, layers of karma, which is you and your life right now. Your body karma, your health, which is not just one karma. You know, with our bodies in the past, we have benefited, we have harmed, we've made many karmas, which are just now playing out in this body and its health. In all sorts of ways, including with our lifespan. So you can have a long life of poor health, or a short life of good health, or all sorts of mixed things. Like when I saw my cardiologist the other day, he said, well, your heart's in terrific condition. Great. But the tubes going into it aren't. So, I've got good heart karma, but then the arteries, that's another story. And so we've got that. We've got our family karma, our relationships with our parents, and even if they're dead, with all the residue for the rest of this life for most people, what went on with their parents, how they were shaped through their early years and so on, that's carrying on. And then our siblings, sometimes that's carrying on too, some of them gone, some of them not gone. I lost 2, still got 1. So there's that. And then human relationships, people who come into our life, the future, they come in, they're new, then that becomes the present. And then they're gone. And then there's wealth. Again, not just one wealth karma, but many results of our past generosity, our past meanness, and so on. So we have up and down wealth karma, or for some lucky people, up and up and up, in terms of wealth, or for some unlucky people, down and down and down, whatever. And so on and so on. Everything you are just now has so many causes. That's the present. Now, some of those results, because of their causes, may last for only a few days. Some of them may last a few years. Somebody comes into your life, they're there for a few years. Things happen, significant things happen, they go. They may last nearly all of this lifetime. So that's our present, and then also we carry invisibly, but very really, the karma for the future, where the new karmas will come in, the new people will arrive in our life, the new health stories, the new money stories, the new everything stories. We carry that. And sensitive people can feel it in themselves or in other people. Sometimes it's quite sad. People carry such heavy karma. People avoid them. They don't know why, but you just don't want to. They're not good news people. Other people you want to be near to. They are special, light, blessing. So that's the present moment. The causes have happened, and the results are yet to happen, or they are playing out just now. So the important thing for us is we can't do too much about that. The causes have been made. If the results haven't at all started yet, then there are Buddhist practices to remove the harmful karma we've created that hasn't manifested yet. And it's vital we do that. Absolutely, absolutely vital. Suffering that could be got rid of, no point. But otherwise, not much we can do. That's our karma. Not much we can do to change it, to change the wealth, the people, the health. We do what we can. It's also our karma not just to have cancer, but to have good doctors. That's good karma. And good support. And the money to buy the medicines, make your life more comfortable, whatever it is. But the main thing, from the point of view of Dharma, is we can't do that much about the karma itself that's manifesting, but we can do a lot about the way we read it, the way we react to it, the way we use it for good. And of course, Tonglen practice is a wonderful example of that, where suffering can no longer hurt because it turns into compassion. It turns into shunyata, into emptiness. So the key point for karma is to use it and to translate it. Translate's a good word. Translate, trans means across, late means from one side to the other, lateral, it's like in lateral. So what's happening when we translate it, it's up to us whether it becomes good news or bad news, suffering or opportunity, and so on. Easily said, hard to do, but nevertheless, that's what Dharma is very, very much about. So, being in the moment. Now, there's an interesting thing too, being in the moment. When you practice mindfulness and meditation, then being in the moment in terms of, how can you say, mental cocaine is a wonderful experience. Shouldn't really say that, but you practice mindfulness and then you really are in the moment, this very special feeling. And you kind of feel connected with everything beyond time, really alive, and so on and so on. We call it being in the present. And it has a very special feeling, almost, you could say, a sacred feeling. Let me give you a few seconds to think. Some time to think about being in the present. Why does it feel so good? Like your present moment may be a banana. Is it the magic of bananas? Or the taste of a banana, or just the sight of a banana? That's the present. That's the actual present. Banana present. Banana karma present. No. Why you feel so good and right is because your ego shut up. The illusion of ego faded away for a bit, and there was just reality produced by karma. Not the me experience, duality, all that stuff. For a moment, it was just banana. Oh, banana. Wow. Secret of the universe, banana. I'm there, I've got it. This is what it's all about. Being in the present, being in the banana, no. It's about no ego and no duality, but anyway. So the really useful being in the present in Dharma is using your karma for liberation. from suffering. That's it. And although it does feel so good to be mindfully in the present, and that does help a lot, we have to face things. But anyway, let's get back to Mipham. And so the present causes have happened, the results are still not finished or have yet to start manifesting. The future is where the causes haven't been made yet. But the future starts in the next moment. So the karma that you're making this afternoon and tomorrow morning, you're creating causes. You are writing the story of your future through your karmic actions. So neither causes nor results happened yet. Like I say, we'll come back to this chapter later on in the year. So that's the future. Time durations, then you'll see we get how do humans measure time. So we use time, it's our convention. We need language to express that something was very brief or longer or even longer or very long lasting. So he goes quickly through what we find in the scriptures, because basically that's his job with abhidharma, telling us the time references we find in scriptures. So we get what is called kechik in Tibetan, and I put it into scientific terms, minimum practical time unit, or an MPTU, kechik. But that's the shortest time you find in the scriptures. And in practice, it is said that those who have very, very excellent shamatha can actually experience one of these after another. So they experience time, can experience time that slowly. So 120 of these smallest moments, they're sometimes called shortest. Shortest is better than smallest. Shortest moments, 120 of them make one kechik. It's a different type of kechik. Here we get into language. Let's not bother. 1.6 seconds, right? So 1.6 seconds is sort of the time of a finger snap, which is, they didn't have seconds, they didn't have watches. Switzerland wasn't invented like in the Buddha's time. So what's a useful short period of time? So then divide that into 120, and that's the shortest possible time you can experience. And so sometimes they say, let's do it quickly because it's fun. This is the fun bit. How to explain that to people if you're explaining abhidharma back in the day, as they say, back then, in the old times, before watches, in those times. Then you take a mushroom and you take the gills underneath a mushroom, the little spokes, and you take 120 of those and you compress them in a pile. So you need to take them out of the mushroom. You compress them in a pile, and then you take a sharp needle and you dig it through the pile of mushroom gills during the time it takes to snap your fingers, right? So the time the needle tip takes to go from one mushroom gill to the next is one minimum practical time unit. So this occurs in texts about meditation, mind experience, consciousness, and so on. We need that as our basic time period. So then 1.6 seconds, 60 of those become what's called a period. That's 1 minute, 36 seconds. 30 periods become what's called a section of the day, 48 minutes. 30 sections make a day. So rather than having hours and 24 hours in a day, they had those sections of the day, 48 minutes, and 30 of those in a day. 30 days make a month, and 12 months make a year. So this is just to tell us about time in the scriptures. Now, now we're going away from the sutras to the tantras, and in the tantras we're very concerned with the microcosm of the body and the macrocosm of the universe, and how the inner workings of our chakras and channels echo the outer workings of what appeared to us as the movements of the planets and the seasons and the zodiac and the sun moving through the zodiac. So breath becomes quite important. Now, a breath is the normal breath of a grown-up person in a balanced state of health. So you need to find an ideal grown-up person in a balanced state of health, and they're one breath. But breaths are important. So 6 breaths became what they called a water clock. They had water clocks that dropped drips. 60 water clocks becomes a water measure. That's 24 minutes. And you'll see if you compare that to the sutra ones, that's half of the section of the day. And 60 of these water measures becomes one day. You've got all this in the backup document. So you can put all that together and do a bit of maths. But then also we put it together with the beat of the pulse. So this comes now through in Tibetan medicine of what is a normal pulse. During one breath, which is about 4 seconds if you work it out. We did this when we were researching all of this with the Khenpos and with Khenpo Tsenam and Tibetan doctors. Then we have to work out what this is in terms of times. But anyway, one breath is 300 minimum units. During one breath, a healthy person's pulse beats 5 times. And then we get all of that in terms of the water measures. So that's, let's leave that there. Afterwards it just becomes mathematics. And if I do any more, you'll just listen. You go in one ear and out the other. It's better to have it on paper and to look at it on paper if you're interested. It's only moderately interesting if you are working with old scriptures and time spans, either very short one in meditation texts or very big ones in texts about the universe and how long people live in the Deva realms and that kind of thing. Now the next thing he goes on to are the 2 sorts of what are called instant. This word kechik, or moment. And until you know what he says, it can be quite confusing if you're a translator, because you say this lasts a moment. So there are 2 ways of understanding the word moment. It comes out in English as well, pretty similar. So one is the shortest possible time unit. The needle going through the mushroom goes during the time of finger snap. That one, that's a moment. So something could be so many of those, hundreds, thousands, trillions of those. But also a moment in terms of karmic time is how long something lasts. For instance, if in your life, what name am I using today? Not Fred, George, okay. George came into your life And George was around in your life for 10 years, quite present one way or another, first as a friend, then he went off with your wife, and then you made up and you became friends again, then he gave you a job, and so on. George was big in your life for 10 years. And then he went off to Australia. You never heard from him again. That was the George moment. Or like when you did your studies, your university years. It's when there's something that's got its own reality, its own feel. It starts, it endures, it comes to an end. That's, in Buddha's teaching, that's big. Things begin, they last, they come to an end. Everything that is due to causes and conditions comes into being, lasts, ends. So that is a moment. So he says, the shortest case, he says, is more or less something that takes that long. Shorter than that is a bit too quick. It happened before you could notice it. But sort of finger snap time is an idea of the shortest moment. Yeah, it's very interesting for us. Remember, maybe you don't, but when I was a boy, there were places you went to for fun, arcades they were called, and you could look in a thing where cards flipped over so fast they made like a movie. It was lots of individual drawings, but it went so fast, you turned with your hand, and then you saw something happening. So it was continuous movement, but if you slowed down, then you started to see individual things, and then you speed up and you can't see the individual things anymore. So it's to give you some idea of how ordinary perception can be, as opposed to the yogic perception of the tiniest moment. But then the longest moment in terms of an experience, wait for it, is from the time you first take the bodhisattva vow to the time you actually become Buddha. If you go the traditional bodhisattva way of 3 cosmic eons. Now, of course, in abstract thinking, 4 cosmic eons would be longer. But that wouldn't be a moment in terms of your experience. Remember George? Your experience. Remember university, your time of study. Period. So in terms of our experience, what's the longest experience we'll have if we're on the classic bodhisattva path is from that very first time we take our bodhisattva vow. And then we are bodhisattvas. We're in that journey, and it goes on and on, and life, and we die, and we pick it up again, and we die, reborn, pick it up again, and we die, reborn, we pick it up again. And we have lives where we've forgotten about it, and other lives where something kindles it again. And eventually, we get there. But that's called a moment. And like all experiences which begin and endure and end, when it's over, it will really feel like a moment. George, when he was gone, it was like a moment. And when you're Buddha, anyway, you'll go beyond time, whatever time is, but you'll go beyond time, and it will be gone. So there's that. And then there's ways of classifying the 3 modes of time is the next topic. This is the way most people think of it. Past is what happened up to now. Future is what's about to happen and what will happen after that. is future, and now is now. Although in Africa, they've got different ways of saying now. You get now and now and just now. And now doesn't mean the same as it does in England, in South Africa, but that's another story. But anyway, now is the present moment, which we can't grasp because it's gone before you can even look for it. This present moment that we sometimes feel, I'm in the present. I'm in the present. But the actual present that you were in has already gone before you could even think the R of the word present. Present. By the time you got to R, already that moment had gone. And you're in a new present, which isn't present because it's gone already. But anyway, most people think of past, what went, future, what's yet to come, now. That's fairly straightforward. But we know when some terms like Karmapa Noah of the 3 times. I think most people, when they hear this, they think past in those terms, and future, what we don't know about yet, next year, 3 cosmic eons from now. But it's also in terms of karmic time, where the causes and results are finished. Karmapa is aware of what's going on right now, what's latent, the karma we carry, what's going on behind the scenes in our mind of karma and so on, and what didn't even come about yet, in those terms as well. And then, referring to the scriptures, there are the beginning and the end of ages. The word for an age is kalpa in Sanskrit. But it's not a one thing. There isn't a kalpa. It means an age. So there are big kalpa, big ages, or overall ages, and within them there are sub-ages, and within the sub-ages there are sub-sub-ages. So when in the 1970s, studying with Khenpo Sultim, at one point, it's very good, we had a big blackboard, and he did a graph about the big kalpa and how, in general, lifespan and quality of life diminished and diminishes, and then one Buddha comes, and then it diminishes and diminishes, a second Buddha comes, it diminishes, and the third Buddha comes, and it gets going towards its low point, and Shakyamuni Buddha comes, and then it goes so low it's horrible. Life, the quality of life, the lifespan, everything is degenerate beyond belief. And then it starts to pick up and pick up and pick up and pick up, and it gets to a point where Maitreya Buddha comes, and then it goes up and up. More Buddhas come, it goes down and down, with all of these up and down curves, according to the Kala Chakra Tantra. So this is all within one big kalpa. There are the sub-kalpas, which are the loops, the up and down loops. And then within the up and down loops, there's the increasing kalpa, decreasing kalpa, what we call the time of dregs or the time of degeneration. It gets complicated. Each one is called kalpa. So kalpa is not just one thing. It's kalpa, little kalpa, this kalpa, intermediate kalpa, lots. So Mipham talks about those. Upward increase is when things are getting better. Lifespan, the quality of the environment, the moral quality of people, human interaction, human understanding, communication, everything's getting better in the upward age, and then downwards is getting worse. And then at the end of the kalpa, everything disappears. It literally all goes up in smoke. So we study that in the sutras as well. beings carry on, but this family of beings which has been together for these incredibly long ages scatter and go, and other kalpas start. So we're like a huge family of beings, trillions upon trillions upon trillions, all linked with each other, but we're just a tiny bit of the whole story. Our story together is in terms of kalpas and ages. So when it goes through waves of fire and water and wind. The elements themselves collapse. Now we get to three sorts of day. This is interesting. This is really quite curious. We're coming back now to astrology. Mipham was very good on astrology, and there's very interesting dialogue and criticism in his time about, well, didn't Buddha say that astrology was misleading? And well, not really. What Buddha said was that people mislead themselves a lot with astrology, which is not quite the same thing. And so anyway, let's not go there. But there was a discussion, an argument at Mipham's time, because he was very good at it, and he made it very clear. In Vajrayana teachings, tantric teachings, astrology is very important because we are looking very practically at the relationship of our body, and in particular our subtle energy, and chakras, and channels, energies, and so on, in relation to the cosmos around us and life around us. Microcosm, macrocosm, inner world, or outer manifestation of a world. And how if you change the one, you change the other, but how the outer world, which is like a huge clock, also resonates within our chakras, and we feel the universe at work. So astrology is very important. And there we get three sorts of day. We get a solar day, You've got that in your notes. It's easier in your notes than in Mipham. But for some reason, in ancient times, and very ancient times, going back 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years and so on, the 360 degrees of a circle is important. 60ths, and dividing a circle into 6 and 60ths and so on, getting 360 degrees is important. So a solar day, which means a day based on the sun, is 1/360th of the time it takes for the sun to go from one position in the zodiac and to return to it. So like the first 0 degrees of Aries in the zodiac, where the sun is seen from the earth, then that's a real year. That's a real year when it comes back to 0 Aries, from 0 Aries. So if we divide that time into 360, so we have the sun going through the zodiac, going through the 12 houses, making the 12 months, and then one solar day will be 1/30th of a month. It's a 30th of the times of the sun's passage through a house in the sky. So that is the there will be 360 of those in a year, so it's the longest day. It's the longest day. It's more than 24 hours. Because it's a fraction of a whole year. We have a lunar day. That's a solar day. 1/360th of a year, if you put it easily. A lunar day is a 30th of a lunar month. What is a lunar month? It's the time it takes for the moon to go from new moon back to new moon. But then, what's happening there? Deep breath, we're almost at the end. But now, if you know this, then it's easy. If you don't know it, it takes a bit of thinking. But over here is the light, right? That's the sun. I should have positioned a light there, but never mind. Over here, if you're looking, this side of me is the light. There's the earth. Right? And the moon is going around the earth. Oops. That doesn't work without me getting my fingers all messed up. How are we doing it? Like that. There we go. Moon's going around the earth, right? Now, if the sun is over there, all right, when the moon is here, we can only see the dark side of the moon because the sun's behind it. That's a new moon. That's when it's almost black to look at. Not quite, because we get the reflection from the earth, which means if you look really hard on a new moon, you can actually see a dark grey disk. And then the moon goes round and round and round until it's on this side of the earth, and it's fully reflecting the sun's light from over there. From over here, wherever it is fully reflecting the sun's light, and we see a full moon, right? And then it keeps going around the earth and comes back to where it's blocking the sun's light, and it's new moon again. So that's a month. But during that month, the sun over there has also moved on through the zodiac. So the moon has to go around and then catch up with, so it's not quite the same position as it was at the beginning of the month. Where was I? There. Everything's not mirrored. It's very funny. Okay. It doesn't have to just come back to the place where it was at the beginning of the month, because the sun's moved round a 12th of the zodiac. In the meantime, it has to catch up with it to be blocking it and give us a new moon. So I hope that was a bit clear. Or if it's my head is the earth and the moon's going round and round, it gets new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon, and so on. So a lunar day is the time it takes for the moon to go through 1/30th of that journey. Right. A lunar day is the time it takes for it to go through 1/30th of that journey. It gets a little bit more complicated. Gosh, and it's late because we divide the sky into 28 lunar houses. So 28, 30, it's very similar, but not the same. But anyway, it means a 30th of the journey. So if the new moon was exactly at, say, 1 o'clock this afternoon, then by something like 12 o'clock tomorrow, the moon will have gone a 30th of that journey. So the lunar day goes from this time today to that time tomorrow. It's not a day in our sense of, oh, the sun comes up, it's day and it's night. A lunar day is just about the moon's movement around the earth in relationship to the sun. So that's why it's difficult if you're following a Tibetan calendar and you say, oh, this happens on the 8th lunar day, we do Tara. And you think, oh, that's today. And for you, today is when the sun comes up in the morning and it goes down at night. But it's not, because the lunar day may have started at 11 o'clock last night and end 11 o'clock this morning. It overlaps. That's why you need a calendar to really work it out. And then it gets more complicated. It's wonderful, because we've got time zones. So what's the right lunar day when the Tibetans do their prayers in Tibet? By the time it gets round to us and we've woken up, we say, oh, it's this day. We look on our calendar, it's the 8th lunar day. It's almost over in Tibet and they've done their prayers. And we're in the 9th lunar day. But anyway, it's just to say a lunar day is a fraction of the moon's journey from new moon to new moon. A zodiac day is the sun's journey, 1/360th of the sun's journey back to the same place in the cosmos. And then we get a day, which we can call a usual Sunday, which is from sunrise to sunrise. Well, no, not really, but that gives you the idea. It's a day like we normally go, yeah, I'll come today, I'll come tomorrow. In the middle of that, there's the night, where we sleep usually, and then there's tomorrow, which is another day. Problem is, because the earth wobbles, then summer days are long, winter days are short. So sunrise to sunrise varies as we go through the year. We say today starts at sunrise. Then in the summer we get very long days and short nights, and in the winter we get short days and long nights. It's not constant. So if we look at all the civilizations, the Greeks, the Romans, the Chinese, the Indians and so on, who've dealt with this problem, the solution's very, very clever. You take the point between sunrise and sunset, which is roughly midnight, and then midnight to midnight is really quite consistent. There you get a 24-hour day, more or less, without the problem of sunrises and sunsets. So anyway, you know that if you're following Tibetan calendars, it's very, very useful to understand this. Otherwise, it's quite confusing. People say, is today the 8th lunar day? Well, it's the last bit of the 7th and the beginning of the 8th, and the rest of the 8th is tomorrow morning, and then the 9th starts, depending on which part of the planet you're on. Because it's true, you've got Buddhists following these Tibetan calendars, and they're literally on the other side of the planet. Yeah. So anyway, he finishes by saying, we do need to know about all these different ways of measuring time, because even though it's a worldly convention, to understand the scriptures, the sutras and the tantras and the Buddha's predictions and so on, we need to know. But then he also says, in the highest meaning, then we know there is no such independently existing thing as time. So then how we think of that, we don't. But some people do. And so this becomes very interesting. Like in quantum physics, there's what's called block time. It's like a block of paper. Not just one sheet of paper, but a block of paper, sort of, within which any arrow of time irreversible forward movement of something taking place is in there somewhere, or there somewhere, or there somewhere. But in that kind of a sense, everything's already happened, if you think about it. I'm not saying quantum physicists say that, but if you think about the implications of it, everything already happened. Now, this gets interesting. If you've ever done retreat, months of retreat, same practice, every day is the same. You don't know, you can't tell one day from another. You're in the moment of breakfast, which is usually the same breakfast, and then you start your prayers, and then you're in the offerings, you're in this bit, that bit. It's just the same as yesterday, just the same as tomorrow. And then we see other people going through realities which we feel like we've been through, like I mentioned earlier on. They're there going through this reality. It's almost like there's a limited number, tens of thousands of possibilities of experience, but that's it. You know, playwrights, they say? There's basically only 7 plays or whatever it is. It's a tragedy, it's a comedy, it's a this, it's a that, but otherwise you get details of the plot, but only 7 basic stories. It's like there's only tens of thousands of basic possibilities of mind's experience. Oh, now I'm in this one. Now I'm in flower-smelling reality again. Now I'm in broken-hearted, lost my lover reality again. Now I'm in going to the doctor's reality again. But there's a limit. And people who are in them, even though the details vary. I said we'd have fun, didn't I? Marlene Dietrich. Falling in love again. What am I to do? Again and again and again. You know, it's happening again. The signs, the symptoms, it's all kind of there. Or the sadder realities, the happier realities. Cooking a meal again, you're washing up again, you're shopping again, and shopping yet again. You've made that mistake again. Why? How on earth could I? But it's familiar. So there's this idea, it's sort of something like the way the Samkhya philosophy works in India. It's that everything exists there, but we only make manifest. We only draw out of all that existence this local reality just now, and then it's finished, and another one, and another one. So there's potential, because all of those things are possible, and they can exist. Buddhism doesn't see it like that, but there's nevertheless the idea of 84,000 possible realities, and very much in experience. You're here again, you're there again. And then when you become Buddha, there is no more time. So we call it timeless time, in which everything is known, because you are the wisdom that's aware of everything that ever happened, will happen, is happening, in people's relative place in time and space. Thank you very much. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained by the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. And through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more Through this virtue of this session, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So thank you very much. It was a long session, but then it's a one-off, so it had to be, to pack in a minimum. It tells me that when we come to it again later on in the year, I need 2 sessions. So anyway, if you've got any thing you'd like to say or question you'd like to ask, we've got a little bit of time.
Hi, Ken. You mentioned the downward spiral of human experience through the first 3 Buddhas and then Buddha Shakyamuni, and that it continued after Buddha Shakyamuni, but then reached a point where it started to go upward again. Do the texts say, putting it bluntly, where we are? I get the impression we're still on the downward movement.
Yes. That's what it says.
When will this?
It's hard to calculate it in terms of numbers of years. It looks like it's going down for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, right? And so what happens is, first, the Buddha's teaching disappears from this world. Because there's no more Buddha's teaching, then most people on a bodhisattva path, Dharma people, won't be reborn in this particular world. They'll be in another part of this huge interconnected family of worlds where things are better. But in this world, things will go down, and people with very horrible karma will get reborn. It says until the average lifespan's 10 years or so only. There's disease fighting everywhere. The environment's in a wretched state. And it's at that moment that Maitreya starts to manifest, and people are just blown because he looks so different, he is so different. And then things build up and build up, and Maitreya comes. But if you look at the graph of quality of life, when Maitreya comes, the quality of life is much better than it is at Shakyamuni's time. Shakyamuni of the 1,000 Buddhas, 1,002 Buddhas of this age, comes at the darkest of all times compared to the other Buddhas, is what it says.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the question from Yale about if a monastery in India calculates the exact auspicious time for a certain ceremony, people who attend such a ceremony in different time zones do not get the benefits. I think they definitely get the benefits of the ceremony. Sometimes Buddhist ceremonies are strange in as much as we do the powerful, like you said, for us the main Buddhist days, new moon, full moon, 8th day, 10th day, are often times when, because of the lunar cycle and the effect on humans and their brains and their bodies, there is more challenges, there's more difficulties. So that's why we do more prayers, to help counterbalance the difficult energy. It's not because they're auspicious days, good days for prayer. It's because they're auspicious, because we can do something good to offset the negative energy. Why is there the negative energy? It's to do with what's called gravity. The Earth's like this. In new moon, the sun and the moon are on the same time, same side of the Earth. So the gravity of the sun, the gravity of the moon are both pulling the same way. As the moon goes round the Earth and becomes on the other side from the sun, then you've got the sun's gravity, the moon's gravity pulling from different sides, compensate. The moon compensates a bit for the sun's gravity. So we see that on the oceans, and that's why there are tides and the oceans rise and fall. We see it in health. You know, it's classic and it's true that in certain times of the lunar month, people are mentally more unwell or less unwell. So the point is, if it's calculated in India and they do the prayers there at the time when it's difficult, it will have the most benefit for counteracting the difficulty. But in terms of the actual prayers, like praying to Guru Rinpoche, praying to Tara, or whatever it is, then the benefit of praying to them will be exactly the same. It will be equally beneficial. And the fact that we've joined in with the monastery and that everyone's doing it more or less on that day will certainly be a good thing. It's just when it's absolutely spot on. I mean, if a ceremony is very important, then we don't just do it on a certain day. You actually calculate the hours, and you look at the planets, you look at the stars, you look at where the moon is compared to the stars, where the sun is compared to the stars, which day of the week it is. You look at lots of things. And then if you really want a powerful ceremony, you do it exactly that time. Because I used to be Samiling's astrologer, so I used to have to calculate times when we would do very important things like putting vases, bumpas in the earth, or like setting the foundations for the Samyeling temple. When I worked out the time, we went out actually in the middle of the night with Akon Rinpoche with torches and strings and posts and hammers. It was quite fun because I had to line Rinpoche up with the stars. I had to move a bit this way, move a bit that way, now put in the post here. And that's where we laid out the ground. But otherwise, I think it's fine here. I think there will be so much benefit doing prayers at the same time that Karmapa and the great lamas are doing them. Okay, lunchtime by the look of it. Okay, all over the world, southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. Lunchtime.
Thanks, Ken.
Spring lunchtime or autumn lunchtime, but lunchtime. Okay.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Try
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.